Hey guys, I hope you are all happy, healthy, and well, mind, body, and soul. My name is Amanda, and I am from Amanda's Creepy Confections and Palmax Pet Foods Plus Pets here in Brantford. And I am super excited to be teaming up with the Brant County SPCA for this National Cupcake Day, here to help you with tips and tricks to make your virtual cupcake party a great success and a lot of fun, because why else would we be doing this if it wasn't fun as well? So today I'm going to be talking about this tip. It is an open circle tip. I'm going to show you a couple of ways you can use this bad boy in making fun and creative cupcakes, and hopefully it'll spark your imagination. Here we go. Here to start, I'm using a very delicious whippy chocolate buttercream, and I'm using a very whippy delicious buttercream instead of one that's a little bit stiffer, and I will tell you why in a couple of minutes with different designs and why it's a little bit easier to use a slightly whippier instead of a stiffer buttercream for this particular tip. So here we go. First and foremost, of course, everyone's favorite, the swirl. And you can use a swirl tip or do a different kind of swirl different ways. You can make it taller, you can make it shorter with this particular tip. It all depends on the pressure that you apply, like I mentioned last time, and how close you're going to hold it to your cupcake. The further away and the more pressure you apply, the higher your buttercream is going to be, versus applying slightly less pressure and holding it closer to your cupcake. So now I will show you. Start in the middle and go on the outside edge, swirl it around, come back into the middle, and make sure you swoop it off instead of pulling up so that you don't get a little bit of an awkward looking cupcake. So that is the first swirl, something a little bit shorter, not so tall. And then if you want a taller swirl, and I will show you, you're going to add more pressure at the base of your bag, and you're going to start in the middle, apply lots of pressure, swoop around the outside edge, come on up, and swirl off the top. That we were getting a little bit more height instead. Next on the agenda is what I call the blob. Not a lot of people like hearing that. I don't care, I think it's fun. Anyways, you're basically going to be applying a lot of pressure at the base of your bag. Your best bet is to twirl your bag around your finger like I mentioned last time. Give it a little bit of a twist so that you can apply a little bit more pressure. Make sure your bag is basically on a perfect 90-degree angle, and according to your cupcake, you are going to not be too far close to your cupcake, but a little bit farther away from your cupcake, and you're going to apply pressure until it reaches the entire surface of the cupcake. And I will show you. And then you're going to stop and spin off. That gives you a perfect little circle, or a blob, if you will. Next is very, very similar to the blob, except for you're going to be pulling off instead of swooping off to actually give it that kind of awkward looking finish, but in this way it actually works in our favor. So what you're going to be doing is applying pressure at the base of the cupcake, and you're going to be pulling up with the same amount of pressure, but then releasing, but still pulling up from your cupcake, as I will show you here. You're applying pressure and releasing. Applying pressure and releasing. It looks like little Hershey Kisses, like little dollops. You can make them smaller, you can make them much larger. Next design is using the very, very similar technique, except we are going to make what is going to look like a scallop, or you can use for a mermaid tail. So what you're going to do is small little dollops of pressure going towards you in a dragging motion. So small amount of pressure and drag down, small amount of pressure, drag down, small amount of pressure, drag down, and you're going to continue. Should look like the scallops or the scales of a mermaid tail. So we are going to start
by the outside edge of the cupcake and dragging towards the center. So we are going to be applying a small amount of pressure, continuing that same amount of pressure, releasing and dragging towards the center. We're going to keep doing that. Small amount of pressure, release and drag. Small amount of pressure, release and drag. And to finish off, we're going to swirl a small little dollop in the middle to create a flower. So very, very similar. You're going to be going to the outside edge of the cupcake, applying a little bit more pressure this time and dragging towards the center again. So a lot of pressure, release and drag. A lot of pressure, release and drag. And it creates a little heart. The next design I'm going to show you is going back to the blob technique, where we're going to basically create either bubbles or clouds. So if that is something that you're interested in designing in your cupcake, hopefully this technique can help you. You are going to be holding your bag again with lots of pressure at the base, holding it straight up and down and making small blobs and swirling off. And you can continue. Whether or not it's clouds, whether or not it's the bubbles, you can make them smaller or larger. Make it fun, that way it actually looks like bubbles. So we're going to go back to the swirl technique, except we are not going to build much height. We're going to make it pretty flat and make it as uniform as possible. And you can build up on the sides as well, or in the center if you feel that you have missed a little bit, because we want to be as flat as possible, just using the piping bag to start with. So I'm going to start in the center, add a little bit of pressure, swoop on the outside to create as flat of a surface as possible to begin with. Next, you're either going to need a spatula. I prefer an offset spatula. I use a little guy who's basically the size of my hand and forearm. I don't like the very, very large ones unless I'm making very, very large cakes. I feel like it's just too big and cumbersome for small cupcakes. Or if you don't have an offset spatula, you can just use a metal spoon. If you please, you can just swoop across the top and do so as much as you would like until you get that flat surface that you are after with your offset spatula. You can do the same thing. You can do the same thing with your spoon. But if you're having a hard time getting that flat surface that you're after, a little tip from a professional. Use a cup of hot water. You're gonna dip your spatula or spoon into the hot water until you basically see your frosting melt off a little bit. Make sure there's not too much water, otherwise it's just not a very good texture for your cupcake, and then you can swoop across instead. And it will give you another smooth, shiny, glossy surface. You can create very, very large letters with this tip using the exact same technique as the scallop or the mermaid tail, where you are going to apply a small amount of pressure, but keep applying the pressure until you are finished your entire letter or number. Instead of creating any kind of drag at the end, you're just going to keep applying the pressure instead. So you can write a letter. I'm going to keep applying the pressure as I go and only releasing the pressure at the end. Just so I don't get a weird little tip, I like to backtrack a little bit to drag so that I don't get a little point at the end of my letter. So that's the same with the middle here. I'm going to drag and backtrack so I don't get a weird little point. And that is the same with numbers. I'm going to keep applying pressure until I get to the end and backtrack.
Well guys, that's everything for today. I really hope that you have learned something and I can get those imagination trains going, let your freak flags fly, and hopefully create something really, really cool and interesting. Make sure you get those awesome creations in, and I want to see what you guys have created. If you have been inspired by anything that I have taught you guys, please hashtag me. I would love to see the really, really cool things that you guys make. And until next time, ciao!